Hello there everybody, it is me, XfreezerBunny. Welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build, and welcome back to another installment of Redesign Newcrest. So I know it's been a while since the last part. The reason for that is because last month I did put out 2 Japanese builds that weren't part of the series, by the way. But I wanted to space things out because I wanted to have room for other builds. But don't worry, this month I am planning on putting out at least one more build for Newcrest, so you can look forward to that. But today we are back in the same neighborhood we built our last house in, and this time we're actually building a traditional Japanese apartment called an Apaato. Now, Japanese apaato are typically 2-story buildings that are made of light materials like wood, and they're typically considered low-income housing. I say that because as someone who watches a lot of anime and Japanese dramas, this is typically the main house that a protagonist would live in, especially if they aren't doing so well in life financially speaking. So the apaato actually gets its name from the English word apartment, I believe. And basically they're quite similar to, the Western idea of what an apartment is, which is basically a flat that you can rent. But specifically, Japanese apaato refer to this 2-story kind of building. There's another kind of an apartment called a mansion, and we're also going to be building one of those at some point for the series, but this is going to be one of the apartments that is going to be part of the Redesign Newcrest save file, or should I say Asakura village. If you saw some of my Japanese builds last month, I did mention that I like the name Asakura village for the save file. But this is the first time I'm mentioning it in a Redesign Newcrest build, so let me know what you think of it. I really like the sound of it. So I think I'm pretty much set on that unless something else better comes out. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, please do let me know. So anyway, the save file will contain several apartments, and I think what I'm gonna do is just make one fully furnished unit and then leave the rest unfurnished. I already explained this in my other builds, but I do personally prefer to have the rest of the building unfurnished because I just don't really want to bother with the lag. If you want to have the entire building furnished, you can just easily copy the, furnished part of it. The Sims 4 does a really good job at that, and you can move in roommates. I think this would be a great place to have, roommates using the roommate system that came with university. But personally, I just prefer to have, one family live here and make this as their house, basically. Similar to how previous Sims games did it, like Sims 2 Apartment Life and Sims 3 Late Night. But yeah, the apartment that comes with this is fully furnished with 2 bedrooms. It's a little bit more run down and traditional, and the idea I had for it was that it's an apartment for a small family that's actually related to another family that I already did for this save file. In my Kiyomachiya, I made like a craftsman backstory for the person that lives there, and my idea for the family that lives in this particular apartment is that they're related. Like, the person that lives here is basically the daughter of the craftsman carpenter from that Machiya build, and she is a single mom that is raising a teenage son. You've already seen the son in the Machiya builds as well. I imagine they work somehow with their grandfather, maybe like as an apprentice or whatever, but you'll see in this build that the mom, she is pretty good at academics, but because of circumstances, she kind of had to sacrifice her future potential to be able to raise and provide for her son. So in my mind, she did really well at school, she did really well at university, but then she got pregnant and she basically sacrificed her future so that she can work, so that she can provide for her son, basically. So as you can see, the apartment itself, it isn't the best, I guess. I don't know if there's a better way for me to put this, but it's a bit like run down, I guess. It's a bit all over the place and not the top-notch quality apartment you would typically see in The Sims 4. It's definitely more run down and it's seen better days, but I really like that. You know, I feel like these kinds of houses give some variety to the save file. It shows that people do live different lifestyles, and I like that. I approve of that. So this apartment, as you can see, it does have a kitchen. It doesn't have a dining room actually, because basically in my mind, the people would probably eat in a more traditional way here in the living room. I think that they would probably prefer to eat in this coffee table right here. So yeah, that's basically the idea for this. If you want to, you can put like a dining table somewhere, but I think The Sims would be pretty okay eating on the sofa, basically. But here you can see me put a lot of books, a lot of bookshelves, and also a lot of diplomas and awards. And as I said, the mom was pretty successful at her academics, but at some point she had to sacrifice it for the better, in my opinion. You know, you don't have to be like financially successful to be able to be considered a successful person. You know, like sometimes people sacrifice for their family, and that is totally valid. Also, one really funny thing I want to point out is that I did use my first pet stuff in this build. I noticed that I've been using a lot of my first pet stuff, specifically that rug that comes with the pack. That rug just comes in a really nice size, which I definitely needed for this apartment because things were getting a little bit tight. When I first built this, I did the floor plan and I made sure that everything fit. I thought that it was big enough for what I needed, but at this point I was beginning to realize that it wasn't big enough. But yeah, you can see that I did cheat a little bit with the space. I actually extended this master bedroom to the apartment next door so we can actually accommodate that closet area, which is really funny, but nobody really cares. I knew that I wanted to have a closet area for this bedroom, so I just kept it the way it is. By the way, for this bedroom, I did keep it pretty simple. The idea for this is that it's supposed to be a traditional Japanese tatami room, and then it would have a futon, basically. I did put some personal things in there, like some awards from the mom as well, and also some makeup equipment as well, because I feel like she would definitely be using that in her job, whatever it is. But moving on to the bathroom, I put a washer in here. I actually couldn't find any room for a clothesline, so I'm considering actually putting a dryer in here as well. Because otherwise, how would you do your laundry, right? But for the bathroom, I just kept it really simple. Nothing too crazy, just your typical toilet, bathtub, shower. But yeah, they're all split into different rooms, which is kind of standard for most Japanese houses. And now we're moving on to the kids' room. So again, it's a pretty tight squeeze, but I was able to fit in everything I wanted in here. So there's a bed, there's also a little desk as well. But for the kid, I did see them as kind of like into sports, I guess. Somebody who's into games and sports, which is, in my opinion, a lot of Japanese teenagers, I guess. I specifically saw them as being really into baseball, so I did put a couple of items like that in there as well. And I also put some posters because it wouldn't be a teen room without posters, right? Yeah, so yeah, here I'm just putting in a lot of clutter. By the way, one thing that I should talk about is that earlier this week, we did get the new Star Wars game pack. So yeah, that was a pretty exciting release, seeing the reaction from the community. EA was kind enough to give me a free code for that pack, but as I mentioned in my tweets, I wasn't really feeling inspired to produce content for that yet, and instead of waiting for inspiration to come to me, I decided to be productive and I ended up doing this build. So I don't think you're gonna need the Star Wars pack if you want to download this, but I am curious to know your thoughts about the pack. To be honest, I probably wouldn't buy it for myself. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna save the rest of my opinions for when I do a Star Wars build, or if I do one of those. But yeah, at this point we're pretty much done with furnishing the apartments, and right now I'm just putting in the mailboxes and the nameplates for the residents. I did only use one mailbox, and then the rest of them I just use one item. I think it's a hook from somewhere, maybe Spade or whatever, because I didn't want the mailman to get confused as to where they were gonna put the mail for the Sims. And I also put a notice board as well, which I don't know how it works if you put it in regular residential lots, but I've been putting that a lot in my apartment builds. And here I'm also putting another kind of like mailboxy area. I have seen a lot of Japanese apartment tours, and I did notice that they had multiple mailboxes. There's one like outside their door, and then there's also one like up front of where the apartment is. But you'll notice that I did change a lot of the color scheme for this apartment quite later on in the game, because I wasn't satisfied with the original color scheme I chose, specifically for the wooden parts of the outside. So I changed it into a more rundown looking wood color, and here we're just pretty much putting in a little bit more extra detail. And this is probably my ultimate tip when it comes to making community lots. Now this isn't a community lot per se, but when it comes to making, you know, public areas, you really need to work hard on your service areas, on your utility areas like parking and garage and garbage disposal area, because I feel like it really, you know, makes it feel more realistic. Your landscaping for your suburban homes will not be the same as what you do for your community lots. And in this case, as you can see, there's barely any landscaping, which is pretty standard for places like these. I just put a parking lot here on the side and a little bike parking shed as well, which is pretty standard for Japanese buildings in general, because I do know that they use bikes quite a lot, especially for the teenagers. One thing that I did realize recently is that the kids can't use bikes, so that's pretty frustrating. By the way, if you notice there's quite a lot of pausing in this video, it's because the train is actually running right now, so every time it passes by, I'd rather just shut up and edit out the audio because it's getting quite noisy. By the way, I also put that one sign right there in the corner. I'm not sure if it's the most realistic thing from a Japanese apartment point of view, because I don't think they would have these kind of like retro motel signs, but I put it there just for the sake of it. But I think that's actually going to be it for this build, so hopefully you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think of the new name I chose for the save file, Asakura Village, and if you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. But other than that, I think I'm gonna go now. Thank you so much for watching. You all have an awesome day. Enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.